Hello, my name is Tomasz Poszytek, and in this video I will be speaking about Process Advisor. Why again? Well, because I have made already a video about Process Advisor, and you can find a link down below and in the description. And that first video actually describes Process Advisor on a very general level. And in this video I would like to really focus somehow on the features that have been added over the current year. So the Process Advisor is a product which Microsoft is really investing in, and it's being developed and it's being supplemented with new features, with new functionalities. And right, first question, what is Process Advisor? Actually, this is just one answer to describe it. It's a process discovery tool. Basically, Process Advisor helps you to understand better the processes that you know that they are present in your company, in your department, in your office, but you don't know much of the details around those processes. And then you create like a process in the tool, and then you invite other co-employees, co-workers to participate in this process. Each of those contributors is then asked to record how they are actually doing that process. So what steps they manage, what steps they take to complete the process, to achieve the goal. And then after they do their recordings and they annotate them, they add descriptions, they add additional information, the owner of the process is triggering the analytics on that recordings, and thanks to the analytics, we are now, the process owners, we are able to understand better the process. We are able to see the bottlenecks. We are able to see the opportunities, the possible actions for automations, the candidates for automation, and so on and so on. Okay, I think it's enough of speaking. I will now just go to the Process Advisor tool itself. One thing that you have to remember, maybe you have to know, that today this application, this tool, is out of preview. What it means? Well, it's just one significant change. Once it was in a preview, it was for free for anyone. Today, after it is globally available, it actually requires you to have a premium license. So once you attempt to create this new process, you'll see there is this premium button here, and it says that you either need to have a premium license or a trial license. If you do have, that's fine, you can create new processes and then you can contribute and collaborate with other employees. If you don't, well, you need to be equipped in one. Nevertheless, this is the first step. So you have to create a process, like for example, registration of the new invoice. Now, once you create this new process, you can then go to processes. Under the processes, you will find, as in the previous version of Process Advisor, a list of all these processes that you have an access to or you are an owner of. In each line, you will have the details about the owner, your role in that process, so you can be owner, you can be contributor, when it was created, and so on, and also its status, so whether it's analyzed, so you're able to already see analytics, and if like how many recordings have been created, and as well the automation status. Now, what is automation status? I will talk about that in a moment. So now let me jump over to the details of the process. In here you will find the details, so that's the information like description, when it was analyzed, the status, some dates like when it was created, when it was modified, when it was analyzed, who is the owner, and as well number of the recordings that were analyzed. Now on the right hand side there is a tile with information with whom this process is shared. So you can have either an owner and co-owners, or you can be a contributor in the process. So just a person who is creating recording, but has no rights to see analytics, to share the process with others, to create activities, and so on. Now the table below shows all the recordings that have been added or created for that specific process, together with information like name, which usually follows after the name of the person who triggered that recording, and their status. So whether they're analyzed, ready to be analyzed, not analyzed, or in progress, right? There are like four statuses. They vary depending on what is the currently, in what situation is the current recording. So like after it is being recorded, it will jump into in progress status. So it will mean that the process advisor is processing that data to make it ready for the person who recorded for annotations. After the annotations is done, after this processing is done, the recording will turn into not analyzed. Then it will be switched to be ready to analyze. After the person who recorded it will toggle a button. And finally, after the owner of the process hits button analyze on the whole process, those recordings that were present at the moment of analysis will be marked as analyzed. Now, if I go under the all recordings, here is where I can actually delete a specific recording. Now, note one thing: once you do delete a recording in a process that has already been analyzed, be sure to trigger this analysis again, because this is the only way to actually exclude information about a removed or deleted recording from the overall analytics. Okay, so now let's go through the ribbon. First, the new recording. So if you want to create a new recording to the process, this is where you hit. Then there is analytics. So this is the whole Power BI report, which gathers and delivers all the information, overview information about how this process looks like across all the recordings. Share. So here you can share with other employees, and then, well, let me share with like Adele, for example. And here you can choose whether you want that additional person to be contributor or co-owner. Next, we have the analyze. So that's the button that triggers actually the analysis of the recordings. And now, in the end, there's the delete process, and then in between there is the create activity names. Now, what is the activity names or activities? Well, basically, once we create a new recording, this is just a set of many steps, of many activities, of many actions. However, they are, let's say, unordered. Process Advisor is working on an activity level. So this is the information that actually is being displayed in analytics. Now, if we want to have the same activity names across all the recordings, so to have a better analytics of the process, to display unified names and to be able to measure everything on the same labels, then we need to create those activity names on our own. So us as process owners, we need to actually define those activity names so that the people who will be doing recordings are going to be able to actually choose from those pre-created activity names. Of course, if there would be a step or set of steps that won't fit to any of those existing activities, then those recorders, so-called, will be able to actually create an activity on their own. However, just be sure to create at least a predefined set of the major activities that you think should always appear, and therefore you will be able to measure your process on those key points. Right, so under create activity names, you're able to create new names, or you are able to delete an existing ones. Awesome. Right, so now let me jump over and create a new recording. So first you have to choose the process for which you want to create a recording, and then actually open the recorder. Now, what is happening right now is nothing actually different to what some of you might already know from working with Power Automate Desktop. Actually, what Process Advisor is now doing is launching the Windows recorder from Power Automate Desktop application. So here you can see the Power Automate Desktop is being set up, is being launched, and in the end, instead of it, there is this fancy recorder present. So now I will switch to Outlook, because what I want to actually achieve is that I want to register how I'm doing the process where a new invoice comes to my email. I then open it, copy data from the invoice, and save it to Contoso invoicing application, so this old legacy CRM system. So first thing I have to do is actually to hit the record, so that this desktop recorder is actually monitoring what I'm doing. So note that once I hit the record and I start to move my mouse over the interface, there is also, there you can as well see those red borders that indicates that this desktop recorder is aware where I'm clicking. So it's actually able to identify what I'm doing. And then every action I'm doing is being stored here in those recorded actions. I'll just move it outside of the window so it doesn't overlay. Okay, the next step is going to be to save this Contoso invoice to OneDrive and then to open it. Now note one thing, this invoice is in Polish zlotys, whereas the Contoso invoice application works in USD dollars. So the next thing I have to do is to actually navigate to currency converter in Microsoft portal. So that's the one. And then to actually switch these two currencies, then choose, all right, Polish zloty, and then what was the value in the first place? 334587. 3345.87. So it is around like $879. All right, the next step I need to do is to launch Contoso invoicing application actually. It is open in a different screen, so I'll grab it here. And then navigate to Invoices, New. And then I'm actually able to simply copy paste data from the invoice where is that, the Contoso invoicing app, to the application. All right. And the amount is 879. And I'll mark it as invoiced. Okay, save, close, and then you can see that there is a huge list of actions. So finally I can hit just to finish. And now what this triggers now is actually the fact that this specific recording is now being transferred back to the cloud. So instead now of the Windows recorder, I should see, yep, this small saving your recording window. Let's give it a moment, because it has to, oh, that was fast. So right now I can navigate back to Process Advisor and to see, I have to navigate then to view the recording. And well, after like you made the recording and before it is available for you to review it, it usually takes some time. In my case, it was really fast, so the recording is already available. So now what can I read from this screen? Well, basically here I see all the steps that I have taken to actually complete the goal. So to move data from this PDF invoice through conversion to Contoso invoicing app. Possibly some of the steps were not correctly caught. That is unfortunately because when I'm running Camtasia, so that software I'm using to record the screen, together with Power to My Desktop screen recorder, so the Windows recorder, these two applications somehow really interfere, and therefore usually the Windows recorder is crashing or is not catching every step I'm making, but basically I have like a big picture of what I've been doing. Now what is important here is that me now, as a person who recorded that recording, I am now able to go through every step that I've made, that I've taken, and see or check if there is no information that I wouldn't like to share with the process owner. So if I find that, for example, here, I do have something sensitive, that I possibly have a screenshot that I wouldn't like to share, I can remove it. That if I have a description or a name of that step that I wouldn't like to share, I can as well remove it, right? So in the end, what is going to be shared with the process owner is highly filtered out, and only, I'm only sharing this kind of information I really want. All right, so now we have to actually put activities, because as said, activities are those points, are those elements on which Process Advisor actually calculates everything. So first you need to select the action above which you want to insert an activity, and then hit Add Activity. You can then drag and drop it, so you can put it elsewhere. I will start from the beginning. And first activity I want to use is to actually download invoice attachment from mail. Now the second one, I think it was here, will be, to save this invoice, to open the invoice from OneDrive, because I'm saving it to OneDrive and then opening from OneDrive. Now you can see that this particular activity name is under the custom names group. That means it is not coming from the process owner, but it's coming from other people who were doing recordings as well. And one of those people actually used this activity as their custom activity, so I can reuse it. So again, instead of creating and trying to write my own activity, I can reuse those created by others. And this way, I'm like somehow assuring that once the analytics is done, the process map is going to really use the same activities to calculate everything. You'll see in a moment what I mean. But right now, once I navigate to Microsoft Edge, so it was here, I need to create a new activity that it will be called Convert Currency, right? So this is an activity that doesn't exist yet in the list of activities. This is here, and it is quite long, so it's end, I think, somewhere here. Now it's in there. There is still currency, and here this is actually a place where I'm opening the invoices application, or maybe here. Let's assume that was the place where I actually started to enter invoice details, and then two actions from the bottom. Let's call them that this is going to be save and submit. All right, so with that, I actually have made those annotations. I have grouped actions into activities. So right now I can switch this process that is now ready to be analyzed. Okay, and then I need to hit save so that all my changes are saved, and they can be changed by others or seen by process owner. Okay, my job as the person who records is done. I can close it and now communicate with the process owner, hey, I've done my job. So you can see that the status of this particular recording is saying ready to analyze. Unfortunately, for some reason, the status, the column status itself is not changed to be ready to analyze, which I think is maybe a bug. I think it should be changed, but it's not. Nevertheless, this particular recording is as well now ready to be analyzed. So right now, me as a process owner, I have to navigate to this details screen of the process and hit this analyze button, confirm, and wait. So what is happening right now is that Process Advisor is actually like recalculating every values through every processes, through every recordings done for this process. And once it is done, once this analysis is done, not only the status is going to be changed to analyzed, so like don't be fooled. Even though this status is saying analyzed, it doesn't mean the whole process has been analyzed. It will be once this date of analysis is updated and is showing the current date, and as well the number of analyzed recordings is actually telling the truth. So it's showing the number of the total number of recordings. I have 7 recordings. Here it only shows 6. So as long as this process analysis status label or information is shown below the ribbon, that means I have to wait until this analysis is completed. It's taking some time, so just be patient and wait. Right, in my case, the analysis is done. The notification is gone, so I can now clearly go and see that the analysis date is updated. The analyzed recordings is now switched to 7, so I can go under the analytics. And then to tell you what I can read from there, and what actually I can find there. As you possibly saw or noticed, when I was describing the recording, so when you saw the list of steps I made, one of the columns which was as well captured, one of the information with every step that was captured, was as well name of the application where this particular event occurred. And this information is as well used by the Process Advisor to deliver even more analytics around the process. Okay, so you can see that the analytics page is being loaded. The tile, this big tile that is still not being loaded, is the process map. It takes the longest amount of time to show up. Nevertheless, we can start describing what is visible here. So basically, what I see is that the number of recordings, the average time that was needed to complete the process, number of variants. This means how many different approaches to complete the same process users took across all the recordings. So I can see that there were 5 variants. 2 of them were, let's say, the most common. Here I can as well find which actions actually took the biggest amount of time to be completed. So which possibly could be those bottlenecks. And then as well, the users who needed the highest number of time, the highest amount of time to complete their process. They might be some kind of my insight, so I can reach out to them and ask, why did it take you so much time? What issues did you have, and so on. So these people can as well be insightful, and it's worthy to talk with them. And now let's focus on the process map. So what does it tell me? If you need to remind yourself what can you read from the process map, open the legend. Here in the legend, you will see all the information describing or supplementing this diagram. So first of all, the thicker the arrow is, the more processes, the more people follow the same step. The more red the specific activity is, it means the more time users needed to accomplish this specific step. If you find these blue icons here with this automation logo, it means that these specific applications or these specific activities were identified by Process Advisor as candidates for automation. What does it mean? I'll show in a moment. In general, what you can see, what you can read from this diagram is what were the most commonly followed scenarios or the variants. So I can see that usually people were just downloading the attachments from email, and then usually they were entering directly invoice details into CRM. Some of them were as well opening some kind of Excel invoice lists. So they were opening an Excel file and then copying possibly data from that Excel to the CRM. All of them, after entered invoice details, they saved it. What a surprise. And then most of them actually completed their work on that. Well, it's like 25% 40, sorry, 40, 43%, circa 43%, decided to as well notify their team. Whether it was via Teams or via Outlook, it doesn't matter. They somehow as well send notification that they have entered details of that invoice. So this is what we can read from this diagram, the bottlenecks and the most common scenarios. Why the most common scenarios? Well, because we can understand, or we can try to say or assume that the most commonly used variant, the most commonly followed path, is the one that is either the fastest one or the easiest one or just the best one. So if we are thinking about automation, we should really focus on one of those variants that were executed the most commonly. Now, the bottlenecks is this kind of information that gives us then the real ROI. So if we do automation of that process, we will be able to save this number of minutes, of hours on that specific actions if we are able to automate them. So for example, if I would be able, just for this case, for this example, if I would be able to automate currency conversion anyhow, so to make it outside of the user context, I would be saving around 3 minutes per each user, right? So per each invoice actually, which is really a lot. If you then multiply it by the number of invoices that accountancy team can handle each day, it's possibly hours. And then let's switch to the application tab. This is the part of the analytics report where you can find information about the applications being used in all the recordings, together with some more attractive information. Let me tell you. So first, what you can see here is what applications were used, how often, how many times they were accessed during the recordings, and in how many variants they appeared. So the position of the bubbles is determined by the time spent in each application through all the recordings and by the number of times the application was accessed. So for example, if I do Alt Tab, if I switch windows between Excel and invoicing application, I access those two applications here and then back and so forth every time I do the switch of the windows. So the more data I want to copy from one application to another, the more switches, the more times I access both applications. And finally, the size of the bubble is determined by the number of recordings. So how often this application occurs across all the variants. Now the second very interesting visualization is this one, application switching. This one tells us what were the most commonly used pairs of applications. So like in here example, users were very often switching between Excel and legacy invoicing application, or Acrobat 32 and legacy invoicing application. That means that possibly they were copying some data from one system to another, or the other way around. And so if I would be able to automate this piece of communication between systems, I possibly would be able to save even 50% of all these load, of all the time that is needed to complete the process. It's a lot. Now, if I just navigate for a moment to the process, just to show you once again those automation candidates, right? So I have like two automation candidates. Now, what does it mean? And what is it used for? Here you can find on the ribbon the button called or named Automation Activities, Automate Activities. Once I hit it, a Power Automate Cloudflow, an empty Cloudflow, is going to be opened with suggestions, what can I automate and with what connectors. On the right hand side there is this Automation Activities menu that shows me the actions which can be automated, or according to Process Advisor can be automated, and with an empty flow. So right now, me as a process designer, as the architect, I would be able to actually automate this process. Let's assume that I think that variant number 1, since it is one of those most commonly used, is the right candidate for the automation. So what I'm now doing, I want to display myself how this variant actually looks like. So what steps or what activities on process map are being used by this variant. So let's wait a moment. Okay, so first, user is actually downloading the invoice from email, then is entering invoice details, saving and notifying, right? So what I can assume now is that this possibly is the best process, the best workflow that will handle this invoice submission process. So what I have to do actually is to maybe start manually. Maybe the trigger should be the Outlook new email coming to my inbox. Let's start for a moment with this manual trigger flow. So next, I want to use the Office 365 action and to get attachment. So if the trigger was for a new message, like if new message appears in an inbox, then I would know message ID and possibly attachment ID. Right now I don't know, but this is just to draw you a big picture of how this for the automation can be handled. So here I'm taking the attachment. The next step I want to do is to enter invoice details. Well, the Controls application is not a new application. It doesn't have REST API or any other API apart from user interface. So obviously there is no suggestion here on the list. However, at the bottom there is this section for other connectors. It says that if there is nothing I can find, hey, maybe use desktop flow. So I will use desktop flow and trigger a Power Automate desktop flow that I have to as well design. Of course, I need to design it. I need to configure it so it's able to write data into Controls invoicing application. It accepts some input parameters. It returns some output parameters, and I can connect directly to the machine and then execute this desktop flow. And then once desktop flow is completed, so it actually enter invoice details and then saves and submit, I should notify team. And for that, I can use Microsoft Teams and, for example, send adaptive card, maybe not this one, sorry, not reply, but just post an adaptive card, in a channel. So here I can post in a channel, and then again I need to select which team, which channel, and what adaptive card. But the point is that with only these 3 steps, I have like a skeleton, the draft of my process. And then if I'm able to complete configuration of all those actions, I already have a working workflow, right? So that was that easy. And right, so having that said, I actually covered all the new features. So the custom activity names and predefined activity names, the applications, the automation candidates, the automate activities preview functionality, the application part of analytics. All these 5 things are the new features that you can find in Process Advisor. And just one closing quote from my side is that although this tool requires premium license to really work, you can find it very useful if you have processes running in your department or your organization that you really want to understand better and that you plan to automate. Now, just think of how much time you can save if you automate simple processes and how much employee can be then maybe not reused, but engaged into more complex or more demanding tasks. So instead of hiring new employees to handle both existing processes and new processes, you can replace those existing processes with automated workflows, with cloud flows, with desktop flows, and then have your employees to do something more demanding. And then you don't have to actually pay anything more. apart from having those licenses to gather insights, to get more information on the processes, to identify those bottlenecks, to identify the variants, to identify applications which are being used, and times that are needed, required to complete those processes by your employees. Thank you very much for watching. If you have any questions to that demonstration, to the Process Advisor, please write them down in comments. I will gladly answer all of them. Once again, thank you very much for watching, and see you in my next video.